The evolution of WWE games from the Ruthless Aggression era to the PG era is an interesting subject because of the changes that had to be made to the games over the years. Yeah, there wasn't just a big change from one game to the next, this was something that happened over many years. The first WWE game released during the PG era, for example, was SmackDown vs. Raw 2009, which was released in November 2008 after WWE went PG in July 2008. And this game changed nothing due to PG. We'd have to jump to next year's game, where we'd see the first effects of the change in content. WWE SmackDown vs. Raw 2010 was the game that truly signified this transition, and the changes made were not just superficial, but impacted the core gameplay and features that fans had come to love. One of those things being the barbed wire 2x4 weapon. This weapon was synonymous with hardcore wrestling, and its presence in the games was an accurate portrayal of WWE and its use of hardcore weapons at the time. As the PG era began, weapons such as the barbed wire 2x4 were phased out, and its removal in WWE SmackDown vs. Raw 2010 was a clear indication that the developers were now catering to the younger demographic that WWE was going for on TV, and that in some ways, the game was moving away from its more edgier past. The restriction of intergender fighting was another significant change that had a pretty big impact on the game. In previous titles, players could freely have male and female wrestlers fight each other, reflecting the intergender matches that were part of WWE programming during the Attitude and Ruthless Aggression eras. However, with the advent of the PG era, WWE introduced a ban on intergender fighting, and this was reflected in the game. When trying to select intergender matches or even segments in the brand new Create a Story mode, you'd hear either error sounds or get an error message, letting you know that this was no longer allowed within the games. As mixed tag team matches was still a thing in PG era WWE, a compromise was made to include it as a brand new match type in SmackDown vs. Raw 2010, although with much stricter rules. Like attacking a women's wrestler as a men's wrestler would get you an automatic DQ, even if it was an accident. There's no warning, and the refs will throw out the match right away. The change was not without controversy, as it took away a level of freedom that players had enjoyed in previous games, and the restrictions during the mixed tag matches have annoyingly caused a bunch of accidental DQs for many years now, which has frustrated players who just want to enjoy the game. The change in intergender match options was also a clear reflection of WWE's commitment to promoting a more family-friendly image. There's actually a pretty neat Easter egg because of the PG changes that's worth mentioning too. If you play through the Brand Warfare Road to WrestleMania story, then you'll see during a cutscene where it was announced that finishing moves had to be hit as many times as possible in the next match. When it came to John Cena's finishing move being listed off, it was named as the Throwback.
But rest assured that no matter who chooses the match type, nothing can help John Cena and Big Show. Because at WrestleMania, I will be unstoppable. I am the King of Kings, and I will be the Champion of Champions. But on to tonight. Everyone knows the pedigree is the most devastating move in the WWE. Tonight's challenge is the finisher marathon. Each of us will be in the ring for 3 minutes, and we'll see how many times we can hit our finisher. My pedigree, Cena's throwback, and whatever Big Show does these days besides grunt. Whoever hits theirs the most gets the point. Did I mention the ring will be surrounded in flames? Now then, it's time to play the game.
This was actually the original planned name change for Cena's FU finisher, although later it would be called the name we all know today, the Attitude Adjustment. Despite these changes, some elements from the Attitude and Ruthless Aggression era still managed to make the cut with no issue. Flaming tables were fine, middle fingers were surprisingly fine, and improved, busted open effects were all present in SmackDown vs. Raw 2010. And those busted open effects were by far the most brutal that have ever been in a WWE game.
Last shot busted him open, and the blood is flowing freely.
It's a shock, and kind of funny that the most realistic and even brutal busted open physics debuted in a WWE game at the height of the PG era changes. Who'd have thought that? The gradual transition of WWE games changing to satisfy WWE's PG rules continued with WWE SmackDown vs. Raw 2011. The blood on-off toggle was a significant addition, as it allowed players to choose whether they wanted to see wrestlers get busted open in the game. The default setting was off, as the WWE really didn't want players, especially kids, having matches in their games with wrestlers getting cut open. The absence of bloody cutscenes in the Road to WrestleMania mode was another indication of the franchise's move towards a more PG image. You might be wondering, why didn't they remove blood fully from the game? Well, there's a possible reason for this, as there certainly was some discussion about it being removed. During the lead up to SmackDown vs. Raw 2011, there was a poll that asked players online how important is blood in WWE games, with the poll results majorly leaning towards it being important to players. THQ likely made WWE aware that removing blood could hurt sales and fan reception of the game. It's likely that the compromise was the on-off feature, with off having to be the default. The PG changes seemingly stopped for a while, until WWE 13 marked another step in the transition, with the censorship of the middle fingers through a blur filter. The game was very Attitude Era themed, and was full of middle fingers. It's possible that in this case, due to there being so many, they had to tone it down and agreed to including them with a blur. And at least by including them with a blur, they didn't try to sanitize the Attitude Era too much, and respected the source material, even whilst WWE was going through a strict PG era at the time.
A little water break here. Oh! Total lack of respect shown by the champion.
The Rock can do any damn thing he wants to, JR.
And The Rock gets elevated and dropped. The Rock on the announce table.
Oh my God!
The rattlesnake and oh my God! They annihilate the announce table.
The jump to next-gen consoles with WWE 2K15 in 2014 allowed for further changes to be made. The blood effects were toned down, with no more blood drops on the ring mat during matches, and chair shots to the head were modified. Running chair strikes would now result in a strike to the body instead of the head, which was a reflection of WWE's real-life ban on chair shots to the head, while the running variation being much more brutal looking. Today, some of the changes made during the transition to the PG era have been relaxed due to WWE being more laid back with their PG rules compared to the earlier days, when they were super strict about it. Middle fingers are no longer blurred. The language restrictions are not as strict, with the developers having found a balance that works for both the older and younger audiences who play the WWE 2K games. So to wrap things up, when you look back on the changes in WWE games due to the PG era, it was definitely more of a gradual process that took several years to be fully realised. To be honest, before doing this video, it felt to us that it was more of a change from one game to the next, but after doing the research, it really did take a few years for the WWE games franchise to find that sweet spot that appealed to WWE without taking too much of the edge out of the franchise.